Hello and welcome back, Eddie Radosevich. George Stoya here from the SoonerScoop.com studios. Josh McCuistion joining us in Houston HQ. Welcome in. Welcome back to the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel. Thursday PM update. Everything is going down, it seems, with the transfer portal. A lot more activity today, I would say. It's picking up a little bit. Maybe they listen to the Unofficial 40 podcast. We're okay. I'm okay. I can promise you that. We do have some names to get over. Oklahoma visiting or has some visitors in town currently.
Yep.
They have visitors coming in town here this weekend, and then obviously throughout next week, starting bowl practice, obviously getting ready for the Armed Forces Bowl. Yeah. We know it's not exactly what everybody wants. But let's start here. Oklahoma did have a couple more names that entered the transfer portal today. Brenen Thompson enters his name, wide receiver. Phil Picotti, the linebacker that seemingly just never got over the injury bug while in Norman. And then Brendan Zerberg, the freshman quarterback. And let's start with Thompson because I do think that, like, of all the portal entries, George, this one maybe came as a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, I think that we kind of assumed that he would probably be back just because you look at the numbers in the wide receiver room. There's a lot of opportunity for Brenen, and he showed some flashes this year. I know that he kind of was, one of those guys that dealt with some injuries, but from our understanding, it sounds like Oklahoma had negotiated a deal with him, felt good about it. He came back, and it sounds like maybe those negotiations went in a different direction.
Sure.
And Oklahoma decided there wasn't as much value there anymore in terms of maybe what Brenen thought he could get on the open market. So he enters the transfer portal. Oklahoma also feels like they can go out, and there's a lot of options. We'll get into some of the guys that they're thinking about bringing in. And so this was the first one that I really felt like we didn't kind of see coming. Some of these we have heard rumblings and whispers of, guys entering and even guys like Jalil Farouk. We kind of saw that coming. Brenen was not one. We kind of thought that he would maybe stick around.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting here. I know that there's a lot of people, the first reaction is, well, Brenen Thompson was one of the only healthy wide receivers. Who the hell is going to play in the Armed Forces Bowl on December 27th against Navy? And a lot of freshmen. I mean, obviously, Ivan Carrion still around. We'll see about Zion Kearney. And by the way, we will be talking to Brent Venables. We're expecting to talk to Brent Venables on Friday afternoon, just in terms of, like, what the hell does that wide receiver unit look like? But Josh will bring you in just in terms of Brenen Thompson. I know that it's another wide receiver that has entered the portal. I think that we can say there is a plan for what they want to do, and it certainly seems like a situation that when negotiations break down in the NIL world, you kind of got to decide, like, which way you're going to go on this.
Guys, this feels like a situation where Oklahoma, I wonder if this was, I guess, the plan from the very outset. There's no question Oklahoma wanted to make some changes, and there was going to be some turnover. There's no question. But I think I wonder if maybe here over the last few days there's been almost a pivot of, like, we can just take this back to, the studs. Like, we're going to just tear this thing down and kind of start over again. And that's what it looks like in this situation. And again, I don't have, based on some of the stuff we've heard, I think Oklahoma is making good, budgetary decisions. Now because I think they can go find maybe not a guy that runs like Brenen Thompson runs, but maybe a guy that's had a lot more production than Brenen Thompson has, or has been a lot more healthy, a lot more reliable in being on the roster. And that's no shot at Brenen Thompson. That just is what it is. So again, I'm not trying to sell sunshine and rainbows. Oklahoma's got a lot of work to do in this receiver room now, but you're seeing, with a lot of the guys that we're talking about coming in, I know we're going to get into those names as we go through the show here, but there's reason to believe, like, Oklahoma is planning accordingly. It's not like, all these guys are gone and now Oklahoma's got to go scramble. It seems kind of like they've been starting to build to this for a few days now.
Yeah, and it's no surprise, if we want to get into one of those names, that a couple hours after Brenen Thompson enters the portal, the Arkansas wide receiver, I don't know how to say his last name, Isaiah
Satanga. Yeah, let's go with Satanga.
Satanga. He's scheduling a visit, I believe, for early next week. Is that correct? And so that's a guy that I think 5'11", 185 pounds, pretty productive for Arkansas.
37 receptions, 491 yards, had a touchdown for Arkansas this past season.
I think that's what, like, all if you combined all of Oklahoma's 5 wide receivers that entered the portal, that would add up to about what they've did this last year. So
No kidding.
again, we'll see. It seems like that's somebody that they're keeping their eye on. But as more of these guys enter the portal, and Josh is right, I think they're making probably smart budgetary decisions. They are, like, whether it's their own guys or guys in the portal, at some point they're going to have to pay up to land some of these guys. And so it's great that they're getting some of these receivers in for visits. Now you got to land them.
Let me ask you about Donovan McCulley. We talked
Yep.
about him on the show on Tuesday. He was currently in Norman at the time when we talked about him, and I think that we had kind of maybe been indicated that he was trying to make a decision on Wednesday. That decision never comes. Is he still in play?
So he, very similar situation to Brenen Thompson, from my understanding. It felt like Oklahoma and him were moving towards a deal that they felt comfortable with. McCulley comes back with maybe, says, hey, somebody else has given me a better offer, or I think I, deserve this. And Oklahoma says, well, this is our final offer. And so I don't think so. I think Oklahoma's kind of, you're seeing a lot of these receivers, pop up in terms of who they're bringing in for visits. Feels like Oklahoma's moved on. Now, if McCulley comes back and says, hey, actually, I want in or whatever, maybe Oklahoma changes their mind. But it's kind of gone silent on McCulley's end in terms of my communication with him.
Coming up on Friday, Oklahoma will roll out the red carpet. It seems like this is a big weekend, obviously, offensive linemen, but there is another wide receiver, and it's somebody that we've talked about before, Reggie Virgil, the Miami, Ohio wide receiver. And if you're talking about, like, number one priorities, it kind of seems like this is that guy.
He's up there. This is certainly, I don't know if he's their number one target, but right now it feels like he is. He's gone on visits, I think, to Michigan State and Texas Tech. I believe he's planning to go on some visits to some of the Florida schools. He's from Florida. We've talked a lot about him, I feel like, on these portal shows. Childhood friends with Jaden Gibson, who's recruiting him very diligently. Emmett Jones as well. He's I think the first wide receiver they're bringing in for a visit. So that kind of tells you.
Second outside of McCulley, but
outside of McCulley,
weekend for sure.
for this weekend. So I think he's certainly somebody that when we talk about paying up, he's somebody that I think Oklahoma is going to be willing to foot the bill if he chooses OU.
No doubt. And there was some reporting. You put it up in the AM update that you could read on SoonerScoop.com. Obviously, it's been updated with information on Thursday evening. But maybe a name that, I don't know, maybe come out of the woodwork a little bit. Isaiah Hunter, the California wide receiver. We'll stick in the wide receiver room. Obviously, a need for Oklahoma. 40 receptions, 578 yards, 5 touchdowns for Cal this year.
Yeah, they offered him, I believe, late Wednesday night and ended up scheduling a visit this morning for next week on, I think, Wednesday. I might have my Tuesday, Wednesday
next week. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's midweek next week. Another guy that I think they're really high on, like you said, productive at Cal this last year. I think he's kind of a speedster. I think ran a 10.6 in the 100 meters in high school. So he's a bigger guy, 6'2", I think 200 pounds. So has some size, but a versatile guy that I think they really like.
Josh, you're a little bit familiar with another name that has popped up onto the radar as of this afternoon and really here over the last hour. Jaron Bradley, a wide receiver out of Boston College.
Yeah, this was a guy that I know a lot of people really thought Oklahoma was going to get very involved with, a year ago when Emmett Jones came in. And, I think there was some interest. I got the impression, for whatever reason, it just didn't quite click. But, yeah, you talk about a big outside receiver. Jaron Bradley's a big, long guy. Really had a nice freshman year at Texas Tech. And, again, kind of surprised me that maybe he didn't do more at Boston College, but this is a guy that really could fit a lot of the roles that I think it's pretty clear Oklahoma's looking to address. So again, we just keep seeing this really clear intention from Oklahoma, like big bodies, outside guys, big physical guys. You mentioned an Isaiah Hunter guy. He's guys, you go watch him. They played some quality opponents. They played, Cal went to Auburn and won. Played Florida State. And Florida State, whatever they were, at least they got some good athletes. Played Miami. So they put some stuff on tape, and he is a big physical guy. George is right. Ran like a 10.62, his high school senior year. So, again, there's a lot of physical ability. And again, this is a guy that I think is a pretty direct comparison to a guy like Jaden Gibson, like that big, long, really just go up and get it anywhere on the field. So again, this is an interesting guy, and again, I continue to marvel at Oklahoma, like they're very clear intent to get bigger in the receiver room.
And Bradley's visiting on I think Tuesday or Wednesday. I can't remember. They're all getting mixed up in my head, Eddie, but I know you have it written down.
Yeah, Jaron Bradley will be here, I guess, next week.
Okay.
End of next week. December 17th through the 18th.
Okay, there you go.
So it will be interesting. Obviously, wide receiver is very, very important. They're continuing to try to build visits for guys or to schedule visits for guys. One of those being that it sounds like there is some mutual interest possibly. Where it is. Dazon Stribling, which is a familiar name to people at Oklahoma, obviously, having he just spent the last 2 years up in Stillwater playing for Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I know OU really likes him. They'd like to get involved with him. I don't know where Stribling is at in his recruitment.
Sure.
He's been pretty silent on social media. I know talking to some people close to him, they're kind of keeping it close to the vest in terms of who's interested and where he might visit. So I don't know if he'll be a guy, but obviously one of the top guys in the portal at receiver, super productive at Oklahoma State. I think over 800 yards receiving this past year, 6 touchdowns, I think it was. So and with an offense that was not very good.
52 for 882, 6 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, that'll do. So another guy that I think Oklahoma, again, would like to get involved. We'll see. They're going to have to end up adding guys, probably 3 or 4
Josh,
maybe receivers.
You have a number in mind right now with all the portal entries from the wide receiver position. Is there a specific number that you're looking at right now?
I mean, guys, as it stands right now, Oklahoma has 6 guys returning for next year with the 2 high school guys coming in. Usually at that number, or at that position, you're talking 12, 13 guys. So, I mean, I think you're talking about 5 guys here, probably at minimum. And so, again, like at this point, it's one of those deals where Oklahoma just gets to say yes a lot. Like, yeah, we'd like you. We'd like to have you. I mean, you mentioned Stribling not being sure where he's at. Hey, man, if you want to come check it out, come on by. Like, I mean, there's really not much reason for Oklahoma, for any guy that they think is probably of their caliber, for them to walk away and say, yeah, we're not sure. They've got to get a couple bodies in the boat, and then you can start to kind of worry about being picky and choosy.
Stribling also a guy that he spent his first 2 years at Washington State. Now, he did miss Arbuckle because he would have been headed to Stillwater as Arbuckle was making his way from Western Kentucky out to Washington State. So there is no, I don't believe there's any connection there.
No, and before we move on from receiver, just wanted to note one thing we reported on Soonerscoop.com. It sounds like they're still negotiating with Deion Burks, a new NIL deal. I know Oklahoma really wants to get that done. It sounds like certain people in Burks' camp wants to get that done, and he wants to maybe stay for another year. We'll see if they can close that out. I know OU's pretty hopeful. They think that they will. So that's just something to kind of monitor over the next few days to see if they can maybe close that thing.
I would imagine that this is the point where you say, if you really want Deion Burks, maybe donate a little bit of cash to One Oklahoma. I think that they would find a place for it in Mr. Burks' bank account. What were you saying, Josh?
What I was going to say is Stribling, you're right. He's got no connection to Ben Arbuckle, but there is another player from Washington State that Oklahoma might have some connection to at some point sooner or later. That he would have played some football with, probably caught some passes from, if I was going to take a guess. So that's an interesting connection to look at maybe down the line.
Let's just go there. We did put up, included in the Thursday night update on Sooner Scoop on the Crimson Corner. You put it out in the story as well. John Mateer, what's the latest with Oklahoma and John Mateer? And just, I guess, to a certain extent, what's the latest on John Mateer? Is this guy going to enter the transfer portal?
Yeah, I don't know. Again, it's tough to get a read on Mateer's situation. I know there's been some reports out there from some Washington State reporters that they believe a decision could be made like this week, by the end of this week. So, again, maybe keep an eye on him. I'm sure OU fans already have his notifications on, but it sounds like that OU certainly feels that if he were to get into the portal, that they're confident that they have a package ready to go for him that they feel like is very attractive. And so I think that there is some confidence. And I think that the other thing is that you look, you read kind of the tea leaves on this thing. OU hasn't gotten involved with any other quarterback. They haven't gotten involved with any quarterback in the portal right now. So I think that maybe kind of tells you what their expectation is.
Sure. It would lead you to think that you know maybe
there's some sort of plan
behind the scenes. There definitely is a plan though. If they haven't gone out with some of the guys, Darian Mensah ending up at Duke, the Mendoza kid actually, the quarterback for Hunter last year, he's in the portal. I know that we've talked about him and watched a little bit of late night college football out of Berkeley. So. Yeah, we'll do that. Let's just go ahead and tell you about William and Lauren real quick because they've been with us all season and we appreciate them. All you got to do is they know about William and Lauren. They're the official custom clothier of OU football. William and Lauren outfits your favorite OU players in custom suits that boost their confidence off the field to match their confidence on the field. Their perfectly tailored clothing ensures every Sooner stands out in comfort and style at prices that make luxury accessible. Visit William & Lauren in Oklahoma City or online at williamandlauren.com. Dress like a champion and make your style as legendary as OU football. Thank you to William & Lauren. If you see us in any suits here moving forward, they'll probably be William & Lauren. Just need to go by and get them, George. You know my size. You can go ahead and get them, as you see there. Very
Kyler Murray
stylish.
knows your size, too.
Absolutely. Still double X, Kyler. Thank you. There's a number of guys in the image in front of you that, yes, as Kerry points out, have portaled.
But they still look great.
It is what it is. Not Xavier Robinson. You saw him there late. Let's go.
They can take those suits with them.
Yeah.
That's maybe one of the benefits of William and Lauren. They do give you a suit to every OU football player. Let's stay with some of the guys that are on campus because I know like coming up this weekend, there's a number of offensive line guys. We have a little bit more information on that. But Ethan O'Connor, we talked about him on Tuesday, continues to be a high priority for Oklahoma, the Washington State cornerback.
Definitely. I think that right now you're seeing them kind of get some interest in some other corners, and I wouldn't be shocked if they maybe try to add a couple guys there. But Ethan O'Connor is somebody that they identified very early. He's been on campus the last couple days now. I believe he's currently as we speak still at OU. I feel pretty good about that with where OU is. Again, I also felt kind of good about McCauley for a minute, and then all of a sudden, negotiations take a turn. So you just never know. Things are fluid in the portal, but I do think Oklahoma is in a good spot with him. Obviously, a guy that was super productive last year at Washington State, has good size. It would make a lot of sense.
All right, let's get into a little bit of the offensive line because it does seem like maybe the numbers there are going to be a little bit bigger than maybe we thought as the portal opened. A little bit of a reminder that, just because OU is going to be playing in a bowl game, we almost, in a way, sort of it's been indicated that there are going to be a couple more offensive lineman portal entries. Mm-hmm. Don't know the names necessarily right now, but let's start with guys that are coming in from the transfer portal to visit Norman, starting with Luke Belinko, the offensive tackle from Stanford.
Yeah, a guy that I think played primarily right tackle for Stanford this last year. I think has decent size, Josh. It's 6'6", 305.
Yes.
I know some of the other guys that we'll mention that are coming in are a little bit bigger. But I think somebody that's pretty technically sound, it seems like a Bill Beatenbow type of guy that you could come in. Is he going to be an All-American for you? Probably not, but could he be a guy that could, be a swing tackle or just play some snaps for you? Definitely. Is he a starter? I don't know. I think some of the other guys that we'll get into are maybe a little bit higher on the pecking order than him, but when you talk about trying to add maybe 2 or 3 guys, especially at the offensive tackle position, he certainly is a guy that has some experience, has some, a good foundation, right, in terms of he's technically sound. I think that he wouldn't be a bad pickup for OU.
Luke Belinko has already visited Michigan State. He's
Correct.
Expected to visit Auburn as well. Josh, somebody that you highlighted on SoonerScoop.com, and you've been kind of going through and just what would this guy offer, somebody that has picked up a ton of attention here since entering his name into the portal and will be here this weekend alongside Luke Belinko is Derek Simmons, the Western Carolina offensive tackle. And when you're talking about a guy, a massive, massive human.
Yeah, this is, I think it's 6'6", 325, just another huge guy. And the thing, guys, so I watched them play against NC State and for those, say, oh, Western Carolina.
Hell of a game.
Western Carolina pushed NC State to the brink.
Leading by 10 in the fourth quarter, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. XOU player Dalen Smothers made a big play late in that game to help NC State out there a little bit. So
and to help the cover. It was a Thursday night game.
But
I know exactly what you're talking about.
With with West, and I get it. Like people say, oh, Western Carolina, that kind of thing. Watching him on tape, this is a guy that moves around pretty well. Like I saw him get out in some screen game stuff, and you're like, wow, at 320, he's moving around like this. I came away more impressed than I expected to be. We talked about it, I think, on Tuesday, guys, where I kind of said, I need to watch more. I need to see a little bit more. And kind of like George was just talking about with Becklenko. Like, I'm not telling you he's going to go be an All-American and fix all of OU's problems, but this is a good player. Like, there's tools to work with there. And again, you have that kind of size. He can move his feet. And guys, I mean, like I said the other day, like kind of a wild ride from Tusculum to Abilene Christian and now at Western Carolina. He's seen a lot. And, I think you get those guys sometimes, right? I think they kind of fell through the cracks and they kind of slowly work their way up. So again, I get people having trepidation. I understand it, but there are things here. Like there are some guys I've watched where I'm like, ooh, I don't see it. But with him, I see what they're talking about, and kind of like what George was talking about with Backlinko as well. I could see some swing tackle in him, kind of a Tarquin type of guy that I don't know if he's a guy that you want to start for 12 games. He might be. I don't know that. I can't say that with confidence. But I do think he's a guy that, okay, this guy picked up a knock. He's going to miss a week. You'd feel okay about putting him out there and running him out on the field, for an SEC game. And unlike some of these guys, he's not going to be giving up 30 pounds once you get into your second string.
And important to note, he's played left tackle, right tackle, and right guard. So he's played kind of all over the place, which feels like a nice pickup in terms of, Bill Beatenbow kind of, can kind of put him wherever they might need somebody.
And possibly good news, he was expected to visit Florida State, as you noted this morning. He's headed to Norman this weekend, and I believe he has a scheduled visit with Kentucky coming up next week. Another offensive lineman, somebody that we've talked about here before, Ethan Oninwa. At some point we'll get it. The big-ass offensive tackle out of Rice, and maybe one of the most talented offensive linemen currently in the portal.
Yeah, when you talk about pecking order, I feel like he might be at the top. We'll get into Corey Robinson from Georgia Tech. He's another guy that I would say is right. It's what those two, right? Like I view this as Oklahoma. I don't know this for fact, but I would assume that they'd like to get one of those two guys and then maybe one of Simmons and Belenko, because I think if you can get Ethan or you can get Corey, that's probably your starting either left tackle or right tackle next season. And then you go get one of the other guys, and they can come in and kind of be a filler, a gap stop for somewhere else. So I really like Ethan. I think he's a really good player. He's got a lot of attention. He's the first visit he's going on is Oklahoma this weekend, I believe, and then I think he is getting a lot of interest from Oregon and Texas A&M. So when you talk about writing checks,
gives you an idea of what they're going to be competing against to get his services. Corey Robinson. Georgia Tech, offensive tackle, coming in a week from today. So that'd be next Thursday, December 19th and 20th. Good news, he set up a visit. What can you tell us about Corey Robinson?
Yeah, he's considered one of the best guys in the portal at that position. I think he was one of the first guys to enter, I think like a week ago before the portal even opened. He's also got visits, I want to say Arkansas and Texas Tech. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
I wrote the story. I can't remember. But when you talk about what OU's going up against with Ethan versus what they may be going up against with Robinson, you kind of like those odds there. But very talented guy. I don't know what Josh has seen, if he's watched much of him, but I know there's a lot of people that think pretty highly of him.
Seems like a pretty good group, though, when you're talking about portal entries and getting them to at least visit Norman, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, this is I like what they're doing with the offensive line group. While, we can talk at receiver about, the numbers, the need, how, if that's all meeting up just yet. Offensive line, it feels like they get to make some decisions maybe, like George is kind of talking about, like, okay, we like both of you guys, whichever one of you comes, great, and we're good. And then, okay, you move to your secondary guys. Okay, this is what we're thinking here. So I think they get to have some choices. Now, George, I did want to ask you, because it kind of felt like you had hinted in one of the stories, like maybe the offensive line, maybe it hasn't fully settled amongst the current roster. Did I read that right, or did I misunderstand
correct.
that a little bit?
Correct. I do think that there'll probably be a couple of guys, jump in the portal, and I think specifically maybe at tackle. We'll have to monitor that. I don't want to throw any names out there just yet.
Sure.
But I do think that could happen. So far, I think they've only lost Josh Bates on the offensive line. I would be surprised if there's not at least maybe two more guys jump in. So I think that's kind of why you're seeing them maybe be a little bit more active in the portal in terms of offensive linemen, and maybe they end up taking three guys. If you could get three of those four, that'd be a pretty good haul. And
especially with what you have coming back.
Yeah.
Logan Howland, obviously, Heath Ozida, it seemed like on the left side. They
Troy
grew
Everett
each week. Troy Everett in the
I do
middle.
think they'll look at center. I wouldn't be
Interesting.
shocked if there's, I know Tyler Mercer's a name that I think they've kind of shown some interest. I think they're waiting maybe to see if anybody else jumps in there. But I do think that interior offensive line will also maybe be a position they look at.
Defensive tackle, David Blaze, been
Yep.
a name that Oklahoma's been in contact with. Certainly, it seems like just from the outside looking in, I'll let you kind of expound on it. But it would seem like Penn State. I know that he has a little bit of a connection to James Franklin.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of his name for a second. He'll probably lose in a big game coming up in the college football playoff. You can almost guarantee that by saying that. That means Penn State's probably going to win the national championship. Jerry Sandusky, maybe he'll watch from the jail. You never know. But David Blade, Louisiana Tech defensive tackle, and he had a hell of a season for Louisiana Tech. 46 tackles, 10.5 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks. Very, very active.
Yep.
One of the bigger names when you're talking about defensive tackles in the portal.
Probably the best defensive tackle in the portal right now, especially considering his production. Like his production stands out, and even at that level, that's impressive. That's impressive numbers. So I think Oklahoma would love to get him. Can they get him?
Sure.
I don't know. It's going to be tough, but I know Todd Bates has been working on that one. I know Oklahoma is doing the best they can to try and get him to schedule a visit. It sounds like, talking to some people close to Blay, they're working on when that might be. He's got some other visits, like you said, Penn State being one of them lined up. I want to say it's Illinois.
Penn State, Illinois, and Southern Cal.
Southern Cal, USC. So Lincoln Riley working on that too. But if they can get him on campus, you never know, right?
Sure.
If you could add him to a group of Jaden Jackson, Grayson Halton, David Stone, Dominic Williams, if he decides to come back, that's a pretty salty group you got up front.
No doubt about it. It probably always gets looked over when you're talking about transfer portal and all that kind of stuff. But Oklahoma does have two specialist positions to, I guess, fill here with Luke Elzinga and Zach Schmidt seeing their time in Norman come to an end and graduating. Jacob Ulbrich is the name that he's currently on a visit in Norman. Punter out of Kennesaw State. That doesn't do much for you. I know
he punted a lot this year. By the way,
he was on. You talk about one of the, and we talked about this throughout the season, but an offense that was more inept than Oklahoma, Kennesaw State, first team All Conference CUSA, averaged 45.5 yards per punt, 17th nationally. Sounds like Oklahoma's in really, really good position there.
Yeah, I think that Doug Deacon's done a heck of a job, kind of finding somebody that you mentioned. He's got some honors this year, and obviously his statistics back it up, but Doug Deacon going out and finding a punter from Kennesaw State, that's a job well done. So they got to close the deal, obviously,
Sure.
but I do think Oklahoma feels like they're in a good position with him. But that would be, when you lose a guy like Luke Elzinga, who was so good for Oklahoma these past couple years, you kind of wondered who would they maybe go after. You knew they would go after somebody in the portal. It sounds like they may have found a gem.
Place kicker. It's a name that really kind of came maybe out of nowhere. I don't think
last
that
hour or
we've
so.
necessarily been just covering the kicker portal like we probably should. But if they were to get this man, I think it would be a home run in talking about place kicking. Lucas Carnero out of Western Kentucky. He was the CUSA Special Teams Player of the Year. 6 for 6 from 50+, including a 54-yarder. And certainly a guy that has set himself up with a visit coming up next week. Was also a Lou Groves, a semifinalist.
Yeah, I don't know who else is involved with this guy, but you'd have to think, reading those stats, he's like maybe the top kicker in the portal right now. So I'm sure there's some other suitors coming after this guy. But again, job well done by Doug Deacon. Go find a guy that's been super productive. You mentioned that. I mean, 6 of 6 from 50 plus. That's incredible. So that's you're talking about like a potential NFL kicker, doing that. So again, we'll see. That's later next week. I think a week from today is what you said. So we'll have to kind of keep an eye on that. Make sure that visit happens for Oklahoma, because a lot of these these visits they schedule them. Sometimes kids go on a different visit, they commit, and they don't go on the other visits. A lot of times we've always said, get them on campus, keep them on campus. You don't want them going on any more visits.
Absolutely. So. December 19th through the 21st for Cornerio now to visit Norman. And as we said, Lou Gross, a semifinalist, made 17 in a row, which was a school record for Western Kentucky this season. Josh, did I cut you off? Were you going to say something?
No, the thing I was going to say is the other thing to remember with this kid, he's just a sophomore, guy.
Yep.
So you could be looking at a couple of years of him, and 94.4% made kicks this year. I mean, that's guys, if you're hitting above 85, you're killing it. Like that, that's great, especially at the college level. But with a third of those kicks coming from 50 plus and you're still at 94, that's unbelievable. That's again, I think George said it really well. That's an NFL kicker that you're talking about there.
Yep. Certainly seems like either one of those guys, or obviously both of those guys at punter and place kicker, would be massive for Oklahoma.
They're going to have some money thrown at them other than Oklahoma. Like when you read off those stats, those are two guys that, while you may not think about it, teams are throwing around a lot of money for kickers and specialists. Like those are important positions.
It feels like we're going to be covering the Palm Squad transfer portal, which I'll lead. I'll take that one for the team. It's insane right now in the college ranks, just in terms of everything that's going into the transfer portal. We don't need to tell you anything you probably already don't know out there. You mentioned Deion Burks. Sounds like everything's good, but you did do some other reporting on other guys, and it sounds like things are progressing in the right direction. You mentioned David Blay, and you mentioned some of the guys that could be coming back next season, starting with David Stone and Jaden Jackson. Yeah,
it sounds like those guys are in a good position heading into next year. Obviously, we said it on multiple portal shows, but teams come after guys that aren't in the portal. That's happening across college football. I'm sure that they have been, either them or their agents or whoever has been contacted. Oklahoma has worked very hard to retain their key players. And by key players, I mean, obviously, some older guys, but a lot of these young guys. And you heard Brent say that, when we spoke to him last on signing day, talking about how they love some of their freshmen and sophomores, and they really are trying to retain them. Guys like a David Stone, Jaden Jackson, Danny Okoye, another one that it sounds like things are in a good place. And then even the older guys that are going to be key contributors next year. Deion Burks, Robert Spears-Jennings, another one that there's been a lot of rumors out there with him. It sounds like Oklahoma's in a really good spot with these guys. So while maybe, people were upset that the portal wasn't going as fast, which it's really picked up, I do get the sense that the last couple of weeks since the season's ended, OU has placed a priority on retaining guys that they feel are important for the future of the program.
Sounds like a positive right now. Obviously, as I think we've said here on every portal show this week, everything is fluid.
Yep.
It seems like you just got to be prepared to not be surprised by anything, but much better today than maybe we were yesterday, or maybe me, just specifically, when doing the Unofficial 40 podcast.
Patience.
Josh, real quick before we get out of here, it does seem like everything is moving in a positive direction in terms of what they're doing. I think that, the tight end position still yet to be seen on what is actually going to happen. You did report on Luke McGarry, though. It sounds like he set up a visit to Oklahoma.
Yeah, on Tuesday, the Tulsa tight end, which, I think a lot of people might roll their eyes at, they're recruiting a kid from Tulsa. He's got some pretty good offers in the portal. I know that he's kind of known as a blocking tight end. So I think he's certainly a guy they like, could be a really good, depth piece from Plano, Texas, would make a lot of sense. I think they're going to have to go after a couple more guys in the portal, and especially some guys that can really be some threats in the passing game. Arbuckle has shown that in his offense. So we'll see where that heads, but I do expect them to eventually get a little bit more active at the tight end position. They got to.
There's a lot. There was a lot.
Devon Mitchell did. We should note, if we want to talk positives at tight end, Devon Mitchell did tweet out on Thursday that he's locked in. He's staying with Oklahoma, so that's always good.
That's a positive.
Yeah,
we'll take any positives you can give us.
I'm trying to stay positive
at the tight end position. Believe me, I'm trying. I really am. Thoughts, concerns, criticisms, Josh, before we get out of here?
I'm worried about George. He's staring into the darkness across from him at the table, and you can tell he's trying not to let it take him. He's trying not to get the worst of it. But no, guys. I mean, to me, like I said, I think wide receiver, you can see a plan. Now we've got to see it executed. You've got to see it come together. What I will say, I think they've been proactive on the offensive line. I like that. I like some of the guys they're after. A guy I did want to mention, a guy that I've had a little chance to talk to, a local kid, R.J. Jackson from Choctaw, that has talked about an offer. It sounds to me like he's going to go check out UCF. I still feel really good about where Oklahoma is from some of the conversations I've had. It's kind of, I think that's kind of a ball is in Oklahoma's court sort of situation. It's going to see what they want to do there. But yeah, guys, I mean, to me, if I can look at all the other positions, I'm okay. And then I look at tight end, and it's just like I don't know what the plan is here. Like I don't get it. But you're starting to hear some talk, I guess, at least of some guys that I think can help Oklahoma, can be the kind of guys they want to have at tight end. And if you can go get one or two of those guys, and you put it with McGarry, who I think is a very like a Jake Roberts kind of guy. Like I think that's what you're looking at there, and that can be okay if that's not your primary guy that you're leaning on every time. So again, I think it's just a matter of they've got to find a guy that actually can be a three down kind of guy, or at the very least is a threat in the passing game. That I don't know that you could count on what they have right now to be any of those guys.
Day 4, the NCAA transfer portal here.
Just wait for day 5.
Comes to a close. Day 5 will be highlighted on Friday. We are expected to speak with Brent Venables and some of the players, I believe, going into the bowl game.
I will say I'm gonna throw out a prediction here. I'm gonna say over 1.5 commits in the next 2 to 3 days for Oklahoma from the portal.
And you're going to take the over.
I'm going to take the over.
We'll maybe get that on Prize Picks on Friday. How about that?
We'll see.
All right, for Josh and George, I'm Eddie. We'll see you right back here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel.